The following broadcast is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministry.
Troubled people. A letter to troubled people. I think anybody who has their eyes open know that America right now is going through a very troubling time. And what is happening nationally is impacting us locally. There's some people in here today who took a hit in their finances because of the stock market's response to some of what's happening, and particularly over the last 2 or 3 days in Washington. And so there's some people who on paper lost significant money. And because those corporations lost money, they're going to have to make it up somehow. And so as a result of that, there's going to be some costs pass on to consumers, and that's you and me. And there's also going to be some services that may be cut or either done away with totally because of what is happening on a national scene. We may even find ourselves in a war, and we're going to be impacted if that war happens. And I pray to God that it doesn't, but there is that possibility. When you look in the streets and you see what's going on, it's heartbreaking. And then I believe that while we ought to be concerned about what happens on a national level, we live locally, and so we ought to be equally concerned and even more concerned about what happens in our own community. And again, unless your eyes are closed and you live somewhere in a silo, the stuff that's happening in this city, in this county, in this region, Southwest Georgia, is troubling. I mean, the way people are taking other people's lives as if they don't even matter. And I'm talking about in brutal fashion. And there was a time when most of the violence was perpetrated man on man, but now women are equally fair game. And nothing and nobody is safe. In the past couple of weeks, in the midst of all that, I said nothing because I wanted to wait to hear from you. And on Wednesday night in Bible study, we had an opportunity to hear from the members, because I have intelligent members. I have informed and engaged members, and I wanted to know what you was thinking. Can I just tell you something I believe? It's a poor preacher who does all the talking and never listen to what the sheep have to say. Part of that is predicated on the fact that the preacher thinks he's just that enlightened, that he or she is the only one that need to talk and everybody else need to shut up. But I am not that enlightened. I want to hear from you. And so I listen and I learn from you. And we ended that conversation with a young lady giving us some directions about what we ought to be doing, and rather than being bogged down and complaining about what's happening. And I want to pick up where that young lady left off and just talk about something that we ought to be doing. And I can tell you this, it has nothing to do with yelling and screaming at anybody. It has nothing to do with blaming anybody for anything. And it has nothing to do with sitting in the rocking chair and prophesying and just talking and doing nothing. But it calls upon us to have a shift in our mind and begin to be proactive and do something different than what we are doing. Because if we don't, we're going to keep on getting the same thing. And so I don't have the wisdom to be able to come up with something myself. And if I did, I don't think it'll work. Because the Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding, but in all of your ways acknowledge him and let him direct your paths. And since I don't know anything, but I know the word and I trust God, I'm going to lean on his word. And in the book of Jeremiah, we have some help, because Jeremiah was a prophet to troubled people. Their troubles were in many ways similar to ours. Jeremiah prophesied to Israel and Judah. Those are the Old Testament people of God, the equivalency of the church in the New Testament. And because of their gradual turn away from God and their move toward the ways, the values, and the morals of the world, which included turning their back on God and worshiping other gods, God allowed a world power called Babylon to overtake them. The Babylonian army went into Judah, went into Jerusalem, and defeated them and took some of the people who lived there and deported them to their country, Babylon. And there they lived not as first-class citizens or second-class, but as third-class citizens. The intent of the Babylonians was to beat them down as low as they could, not necessarily physically, but mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, to take everything out of them, to leave them in a place of hopelessness so they would never be a threat to the Babylonian government or ever have what they needed to rise up and become an independent nation again. For you see, before the Babylonian Empire and before they turned, they were the greatest nation of that time. And so the king of Babylon declares war. He comes in and he takes them captive. And now in Babylon, there are a group of Jews who have been a part of this wonderful kingdom, part of God's people. They're living in a political system that is corrupt. They're living in a political system that does not value them, that does not value their welfare, but is looking out for, if you will, the rich and the famous and the powerful. And they're becoming more rich, more famous, and more powerful. And at the same time, everybody else is becoming poor and more impotent, if you will. And so they're there. And then they have this situation where some false prophets go and say, we are speaking from God. We've had a word. We've had a dream. We've had a revelation. And God says, chill out. In a couple of years, he's going to rescue you and bring you back to your homeland, and everything will be all right. So don't worry about engaging in any kind of work. Don't worry about this political system that you're in. Don't worry about changing your circumstances. Just sit back and wait a while, and in a couple of years, God will turn your situation around. Jeremiah sits down because he's still in Jerusalem and writes a letter to the captives in Babylon. First thing he says to them is that those false prophets, or those prophets that's telling you all this stuff, they are false. You see that there's prophesying and there's prophesying. And the prophets that's talking to you, they are lying. God didn't tell them that. They're telling you that because that's what you want to hear. And they're telling you that because they will profit by telling you that. We tend to treat prophets better who tell us what we want to hear. So Jeremiah says, don't listen to them. You're going to be over there for 70 years. 70 years, not 2. Imagine, if you will, that you're living in a place away from home, system that's politically corrupt. It's a powerful nation, and they're going around conquering other nations, and you have no rights, very little power. I mean, just life for you is just messed up. There's trouble everywhere. And then somebody says it's going to last 70 years. Can you imagine the feelings, the thoughts, the emotions of hopelessness make you want to throw your hands up and holler that floods you? But I am glad that even when God delivers a message of doom, he follows it up with hope. So he comes to verse 11 of the letter in Jeremiah 29, and Jeremiah speaks for God. And listen as God talks to his people. He says, for I know the plans I have for you. Listen at what he says. God says, I know the plans I have for you. You don't know, but I know. These prophets that's been lying to you, they don't know, but I know. The Babylonian government that has you held hostage, they don't know, but I know. And so since I've got plans for you, here is what's in between the lines. I need you to rest on my plans for you and not make plans for yourself right now, because the plans that you have in mind are going to be detrimental. And so I need you to put your trust in the plan that I have for you. Look at verse 11. He says, plans to prosper you. Stop right there. God says, I know what your current situation is. Yes, you're in troubled times, but I have plans, not right now, but in the future, to prosper you. And while the prosperity is for the future, what I am doing now is preparing you for the prosperity that's going to be yours after a while. I know you're broke now. I know you're bankrupt emotionally. I know you're bankrupt spiritually. I know that you are in a deficit in every area of your life because of your situation. But hear me. I'm God. I'm the Lord Almighty. And I have plans to prosper you. And I don't need you to get stuck in your current condition. Am I talking to somebody? Listen, he says to prosper you and not to harm you. That part looks like a contradiction, because God, you've allowed us to come to Babylon, and here we are away from home, and we're captives, and you're talking about 70 years, and you allowed this to happen, and you said you didn't want to harm us. This feel like harm. Read between the lines. You think that your current situation, and it is a troubling one, is because I want to harm you. But it's really because I want to help you. And sometimes to be helped, you got to be squeezed. Sometimes to be made better, you got to go through some stuff. To get the pure gold, it has to go in the furnace. And then that impure stuff will skim from the top. Skim to the top, and it can be just taken off. But you got to go through the fire in order to get it. See? For these folk, when you were blessed, when I gave you houses you didn't build, when I gave you land you didn't buy, when I blessed you with the mind to go to work, when I blessed you with health and wellness, when I blessed you with a house, with a job, and gave you every capacity that you have, something happened to you. You started leaning on your stuff and started sticking your chest out as if you were responsible for your own stuff. And so to help you, I've had to take your stuff from you and you from your stuff. You turn to other gods, and I've taken you from them, and now I have you in a position where there's only one way you can look for help, and that's me. And you see, in the long run, it's better, even if I got to hurt you, even if you got to go through some stuff, for you to learn where your help comes from. So it says, it's to prosper you, to do good, and not to harm you. And here it is. Plans to give you hope. I know you're hopeless right now, but I'm going to give you some hope. I have a strategic plan to fill your life with hope. Why hope, Pastor? Because hope is the oxygen that motivates us to keep climbing higher and higher each day. I get up in the morning and come to Mount Zion to work. I come here to preach because I have hope that what we do makes a difference. I don't give up on my children because I have hope that if there's something going on, that God is able to change it. I don't give up hope on humanity because I believe that God is redemptive and all people are deserving of God's love. Hope. I'm going to give you something. And then there's that word, and a future. I have plans. God said, I've written a script. I have your future life planned. And let me go back to the beginning of the verse. I know what the future holds. You don't know yet. So why are you going to mess up now and throw the towel in when you don't know what the future holds for you? That thing you're ready to give up on, God said, I got that in your plan. I just need you to hold on until the future comes. But you know what? A change in mindset is needed to embrace this letter for troubled people. Because sometimes when you're in the midst of trouble, it blinds you to anything but your current condition. You can easily fall in the trap of believing that because it's this way, it's going to always be this way. You can fall in the trap of hopelessness and believe that there's no way out, and so you give up, you stop trying, you stop looking to God. But God said, babe, I got a future for you. And when those false prophets come into your life telling you, don't do this, don't do that, you're a fool for waiting, you're a fool for hoping, you're a fool for believing. So no, God got a future for me. Let me just say this, and then I'm going to these other verses. At least I keep you too long. Listen, I don't care what your trouble is, in case you go to sleep from this point on. God has a plan for your life. And if God has made the plan, then you can rest assured it's going to be good. Look at verse 4. Let me see. I'm just talking today. I'm just having we're going to have a little conversation here to my people. So look at verse 4. So it's going to take a mind shift. And so, Pastor, what did God encourage troubled people to do? He gave them some things to do. And it started with believing this idea that he has a plan for us and he's planning the future. And you got to believe that, otherwise you won't do these things he's asked you to do. You got to have some hope in that plan, otherwise you won't do what he's asked you to do. And here it is right here. In verse 4, he calls upon us to have a shift in our thinking, to move to this mindset. Some people call it a paradigm, but move to what I am calling out of this verse, a common consciousness. See, all of us walk around conscious. Either we are always aware or subconsciously, we have this idea about who we are and where we fit in the culture or the environment that we are in. And common consciousness means that I become aware of, that I become conscious of, that my experience is a shared experience. And that I have this experience in common with all people. Pastor Simmons, how in the world did you see that? Verse 4, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. When God addresses the letter and identifies the people he's talking to, he says to all those I carried into exile. God puts all of them in one category, the people who are in exile. Hear me. There are different tribes in exile. And before exile, they saw themselves as different. Judah's tribe, Ephraim's tribe, Reuben's tribe, Dan's tribe, all those 12 tribes. And they saw themselves as different. And within the tribes, they had classes. They had some rich ones, some poor ones. They had farmers. They had merchants. They had entrepreneurs. And so all of these categories and labels that people carried, and they saw themselves as different. But God is saying in this letter, I'm addressing all of you by the same thing, you who are in exile, because now this trouble that you have puts you in a common pool with everybody else. And what you and I have to do is to come to a place of common consciousness where I don't see myself as different from you, but we all in the same because we're in the same boat. That it is no me, but it's we. It is not them, but it's us. It is not, I'm not worrying because it hadn't hit me today. You just keep waiting, it's going to hit you. And what I want to do is move to help other people that is hitting before it hits me. Because if I can join you and we can stop this thing, not only will it not hit me, but it won't hit some other people either. But here it is. It's going to be hard to deal with the trouble that we have on a national scene and locally, as long as it's me, we, them, us. Because hear me, I don't care what side of town you live on. You cannot run from what's going on in this world. I don't care what your income level is, and you may be, think you're a little better, you're a little different, but let me tell you something. Your money don't make you different. Because at the end of the day, I know some of y'all can't clap to that because you see yourself different, but at the end of the day, in the sight of the one who made you, you're just like the rest of us. Listen. And I'm going to be nice today because I just showed out so much in Sunday school. If all of us, let me see how I can dress this up. If what makes you somebody is the clothes you wear, the car you drive, how much money in your bank account, the shoes you wear, where your children go to school, where you went to school, the letters and the alphabets, whatever, behind your name, the organizations you belong to, the colors you wear, if that's what make you, can I tell you something? And I'm going to use some street language to say it. You were nothing before you put it all on. Because, see, if you don't understand that your value is intrinsic, that means the value is in just who you are. I am somebody when I don't have shoes on. I don't put shoes to make me somebody. I'm somebody if I'm standing at the bus stop waiting on the bus. It ain't driving a Range Rover that make me somebody. And if I got to get in the Range Rover to feel like somebody, I'm a poor behind fella. If I got to have a polo on my shirt to feel important, I'm a pitiful person. Y'all feel me? And so see, we got to stop that foolishness. So white, black, brown, all this fighting, this kind of American, that kind of American, and watch them labels, the left, the right, the moderate, the in-between, all those labels just to mess with you. I ain't on the left, I ain't on the right, I'm not in the middle, I'm just Daniel Simmons. And the only label that I carry, that I care about, is the label of being Christian. Pastor Simmons, where are you? You conservative? Are you moderate? Are you liberal? You on the left? You on the right? I said, I don't know where I am today. Let me see where I'm. Y'all don't know y'all pastor. People think I'm crazy. And so I can't stay there. I got to go. And so you see, when we realize that we are in this common consciousness and we're in this thing together, then we'll be more inclined to come together. See, because I'm not going to come together with you until your problem becomes my problem. Because, see, we are selfish. As long as something not touching me, my children, I don't worry about it. But when I understand that it's all our children, and if it's not yours today, just wait a while. And so we got to be in this together. So look at verse 5. Look at verse 5. Look at verse 5. And so he talks to them about this consciousness of You know, we all in this together, so we work on this problem together, and that's how we solve it. That's how we make Albany better, doing it together, and not the east side, the west side, the south side, the black side, the white side, the blood side, the Crip side. We just all on the same side. And so verse 5 says, and build houses, and settle down, plant gardens, and eat what they produce. Here is what verse 5 talks about. While you are getting ready for what I got for you, I need you to start building something. Out of this common consciousness, as you work on your problems, I need you to create some stability for yourself. Because when I get ready to bring you into this place I'm going to bring you, I need you to be stable. Let me see if I can say it this way. I don't need you fitting to get ready. I need you to be ready. And part of being ready means you got to have some stability. So he says, build houses and settle down. See, because of the lie of the false prophets, they were not investing in the community. They were not buying houses because they didn't think they were going to be there long. So he said, build houses. Look at verse 5 because I need you to see something. He didn't say rent houses. He's talking about own you some houses. And so I can't stay there alone, but those of you who rent, there's no harm to be renting now, but you need to start positioning yourself if you're going to have some stability to own your own house. And so he said, build some houses, settle down, stop jumping from one place to the other place. And all he's talking about there is stability. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. In other words, be able to sustain yourself and not depend on somebody else. Have a source to feed yourself. Can I say something to everybody in here? If you're trying to be grown, part of your grownness, part of your stability is being able to sustain yourself. What are you creating? What are you building in your community? What are you building for your family? What are you participating in this city to be able to sustain yourself? Where is your garden? Girls, y'all better hear me get you a garden. Boys, you better hear me get you a garden. And see, part of it is you don't have to depend on the Babylonians. And the other part is when you own your own, it gives you a different kind of swagger. It gives you a different kind of position because you're not begging and depending on somebody else who can just do what you want, what they want to do to you because they got control over you. See, it's hard to get people to invest in East Albany, South Albany when they don't live there. And when the people who live there live in houses that people own who live somewhere else that don't care about that side of town. But if it's your house, you can fix it up and you can invest in it. Can I get a witness? And so you understand, y'all smart, you got that. I got to move on. And so verse 5, that financial stability, start creating that. So all this stuff that's going on in the world, while the world is falling apart and stuff is happening, whatever happens, you need to start positioning yourself to be stable, financially, to be stable, build wealth in this economy, build a position where you can sustain yourself and not be dependent on somebody else.
Thanks for watching. Be blessed and continue walking in the light.